Okay, little reaction video. It's official. Jon Rahm headed to LIV to play for Greg Norman and the Saudis in a move that has been speculated now for, it feels like a couple weeks. Definitely has heated up over the last 3 or 4 days, and it's now official. I mean, I just saw he's on Fox News with Greg Norman, Letterman jacket. Yeah, I mean, it's just, wow. A lot of variables here. And there's a YouTube only. We're not going to put it on the podcast. So I wanted to get something up just because one of the best players in the world and easily one of the best players of his generation, defending Masters champ. I mean, this guy won the Masters last year, toe to toe with Koepka, beat him, Masters champ, won the U.S. Open a year previously. I mean, this guy's multiple majors in the prime of his career and just got hundreds of millions of dollars and he left. Now, he has gone on record. Remember, Koepka did as well, basically saying how he would never go, wasn't anything of interest to him, and he changed his mind. Now, to me, Brooks, like John, everyone has a number. I truly believe that. It's always easy to say, I won't do something. You can't pay me enough to do that until someone pays you enough to do that. I can buy anyone watching this with a blank check. Now, all of our numbers are different. Again, they're not asking him to shovel shit here. They're not asking him to dig ditches. He gets to continue to play golf for an astronomical amount of money. Some guys like Phil, very easy to buy. Hit a certain number, he was there. This one, probably a little more complicated. I will defend him here. On June 6th, when that merger happened, which who even knows if it's actually going to happen, but was announced that the PGA Tour and Jay Monahan was on CNBC with Yasser and they were going to be in bed with the Saudis, everything changed. I'm sorry. The golf world was, I mean, it was a seismic earthquake. And Tiger's the king, and he always will be as long as he's alive. A lot like the way Arnold Palmer was treated. From a business standpoint, no one comes second to Tiger in terms of needle moved, cash moved. But they treated Rory like the prince. Now, Rory had been very outspoken and had supported the tour, but Jon Rahm had done somewhat similar actions with his words. But with his play, he'd been a better player in recent memory than Rory. So if you're in Jon Rahm's shoes, wouldn't you want to be treated like Rory McIlroy, kept in the loop, get the phone calls? And clearly he was not. So if you're Jon Rahm, if you're a star employee at whatever company you're at making hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're one of the key guys in turning that business into a cash cow and a huge part of the return for everybody making the money, don't you want to be treated as so? And clearly he was not, because he was not treated on the equal footing as Rory McIlroy. Now, is he as famous as Rory McIlroy? Of course not. Is he as famous as Jordan Spieth in America? No. But in terms of his importance to the competitive aspect of the sport, you can't claim that the PGA Tour can just sustain what they're doing. One, from a business standpoint, they can't. It's why they had to get in bed with the Saudis, because financially, golf is niche. There are not 10 million people watching like that watched Oregon and Washington, or 20 million people that watched Ohio State and Michigan. Golf is not football. It's much more like all the other sports in the country. You know, crawling over scraps, doing everything they can. And when they have a good competitive golf tournament, they'll get 2 or 3 million people to watch on a Sunday. Obviously, the Masters is an outlier, but most of these golf tournaments, are between 1 and 2 million people on the weekends. And a huge reason for that is their best players. It's an individual sport, so you need big names. And once Tiger fell off a cliff injury-wise and Phil deflected, their biggest names were younger guys. And Rory, Spieth, Koepka, and some of these guys left, right? And you can't continue down the path of losing these guys, because the moment Tiger last week in his press conference at the Hero was asked about the merge and where they were going, he refused to say the Saudis' name. Wouldn't say it. He just basically said, we got a lot of options. The moment he did that, I went, that's going to piss these guys off. And rightfully so. We have all the fucking money. You can't do business with venture capitalists. You're never going to make enough for them to be happy. I've known some people, some family friends growing up, and just some guys I went to college with, that have sold their companies to VC firms. One was in refrigeration. Another was in alarms. And what they did, at least over the last decade, when money was pretty cheap to borrow, is they went to certain industries and they'd buy like 5 or 6 in a general area, the Bay Area, Sacramento, Northern California, and they would clump it all under one umbrella. Well, they would pay premiums for every individual business, because then combining them all, they were worth a lot. And then within a couple of years, they would sell it. But it was all based on return on investment. Well, the PGA Tour had to go crawling to the Saudis because they upped their purses this year, and they were never going to be able to sustain it. Because like I said, they don't get NFL ratings. It doesn't pencil. They're at a position of they're disadvantaged in negotiations because it doesn't make any sense financially. It's Adam Silver right now, backs against the wall. The ratings his league gets do not equal getting a raise on his next television deal. When the NFL went to deal with the TV partners, they gave a number. And they said, we're not negotiating. Hit this number, we'll find someone else who will. And guess what? They hit the number. Golf doesn't make that much sense. Now, they have a couple things going for them. Their consumer of 2 million people, the household income of that guy watching is higher than all the other sports. So you can charge more for advertising if you're one of these television partners, but it's still a smaller group that you're advertising to. And a huge reason that 2 million people are going to watch a tournament is because the best players in the world are playing in it. And for the majority of my life, that was the case. That's no longer the case because you can't pay anyone to watch LIV. They don't give a fuck. They have unlimited amount of money. They will bleed you dry. And clearly, when the PGA Tour tries to act tough toward LIV, like, what are you guys doing? Or the Saudis, not necessarily LIV, but the Saudis, they have the money. You have to find a way to capitulate to some of their demands. The problem is, look at the NFL. It is not Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas that are making a decision for the Jets. It's not Aaron Rodgers who's a decision maker for the Jets. It's ultimately Woody Johnson. So when everyone was like, well, Aaron brought all of his friends, well, ultimately the GM had to give the thumb up, and he had to get approval from the owner. Why? Because that guy signs every check for everyone in that building. And the moment you do business with anybody, whether it's the venture capitalist firm or definitely the Saudis, they now run the show, even if they don't have the board seats or any of the other bullshit that technically, yeah, they don't have the power. They're cutting the checks for the money. So you better believe that they got the juice. And clearly the PGA Tour is hesitant to go as far as they probably want to come in because they'll basically own them. But I thought the moment that they did that deal, or the, potential deal, it's inevitable that the Saudis are going to own you because they had all the money. And you can't go the way you're going. They also have some of your most important assets who are international players. I mean, Jon Rahm's one of the best players of the last 20 years. Brooks Koepka's rattled off 5 majors in the last 7-8 years. Bryson DeChambeau was one of the only young Americans that kind of, broke through the fence of normal sports talk, right? Because when he got really big and hit bombs. I mean, Dustin Johnson's a multiple-time major champion. They can't steal all these guys. On top of Phil, even if he's old and shot and a retired gambler, he still is easily, beside Tiger, the most famous golfer. So you lose these guys, it's a problem. You can't maintain your business. Like I got the Waste Management Open 5 minutes away from my house. I don't view that tournament the same, knowing that Jon Rahm, who has been a staple at that tournament because he played here at Arizona State, is not going to be there. That's a fucking blow. Is it a death blow? No, but it's a blow. And you can't have drip, 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 and still survive. So this sport is an absolute shambles right now. And now the PGA Tour is even more against the ropes. And to me, Jay Monahan, whether they end up getting a deal done or not, is done. Dead man walking. You can't keep losing these players in someone's head not roll. But this is just a continuation of what we've seen the last couple of years. A niche sport who is dependent on less than 10 guys is beyond splintered, right? If you tell me there's a tournament tomorrow and it has Spieth, JT, Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Cantlay, Bryson, Brooks, DJ, Rahm, Cam Smith, a lot of people are watching. I can't remove half those guys and have the same product. So to me, the product, which we knew the moment LIV started, but it got dramatically worse. You get a 29-year-old guy who's just kind of crazy, swears a lot, elite player, just kind of a fun watch, right? Hothead, elite player, champion, brings a lot to the table. And while he's not the most famous player in golf history, he's not even the most famous guy on tour right now. But you can't lose these guys and maintain your business. So I think today is just another eye-opening day that, listen, I've negotiated some contracts in my 30s. And there is time when, you feel pretty confident about asking for something. And there are times when you just kind of roll over. And I think that's the same whether you are, unless you're Warren Buffett or Jeff Bezos, you got to give in on certain things, right? Or the NFL or Apple. Like there's a small percentage of corporations or even individuals that can do whatever they want whenever they want, right? Most people have to give in on some stuff. And the PGA Tour, like trying to act like a tough guy, like you're Roger Goodell with Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes backing you, is just moronic. And to me, this is a reflection. It gets back to what Tiger said. Like they started acting kind of tough. And I think doing business with the venture capitalists is moronic because the VCs are eventually going to pull their money out. Like, why would they stay? It doesn't make any sense. All they care about is getting their points. The PGA Tour is not just some huge cash cow business if you're based on what you have to pay these guys to keep them away from LIV. If you could have $10, $15 million purses, okay. But if I got to have the purse size of last year, it's a sinking ship. It's why that they ran to Yasser and the Saudis. So I don't have any ill will toward a guy going back on his word because the people that he worked with and for and generated money for changed their opinion. So why can't he? And he clearly did. And he had a price, like we all do. We all can be bought. We all can. And especially if I'm not asking you to climb Mount Everest, right? He gets to just keep playing golf. So if you sell cars and you make 150 grand, maybe you don't want to leave the dealership you're at. So maybe you would laugh at me if I said 500 grand. Like, oh, my life's still good. I know it's a huge race, but what if I offered 5 million? I bet you take it. I bet you would, right? No different if you make 5 million. You might hang up on me because you love your job or where you're working or your company for 10 million. What if I offer you 50 million? We all got a price, man. This is America. And Jon Rahm clearly did.